We come to the end, the last two verses of the book of Genesis, right here in front of us, verses 25 and 26. And it tells us here, then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, and he said, when God comes to help you and lead you back, you must take my bones with you. So Joseph died at the age of 110. The Egyptians embalmed him, and his body was placed in a coffin in Egypt. Now, the embalming part's added in because the Jews did not do that. We see that running all the way up to the time of Jesus, that they didn't embalm. They would wrap the body, they would anoint it with spices and perfumes and oils and things, and then they would place it into at least in the time of Jesus, they would place it into a tomb, and they actually let the body decompose, and they would come back much later, and they would actually put the bones into a smaller box. We found those all over Israel dating from the time of the New Testament. It's a little bit different in the Old Testament. They appear that they just buried and left them there in a tomb or in a burial place. But Joseph is embalmed, as was the way for the Egyptians. So his body is placed in a coffin in Egypt. Now, one of the interesting things in here, it says his body was placed in a coffin. He wasn't buried. He wasn't put in a tomb. It really appears that his body in this coffin was left, above ground, and was in some place that would have been visible for people to see. And it had to be a kind of a marker for the nation of Israel, that as they looked to the coffin, understanding that it was sitting there because Joseph told them, when you go back, when God comes to get you, when you go back to the promised land, you take me with you. And that'll actually happen in Exodus chapter 13. As Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt, and they begin their journey in the wilderness, crossing of the Red Sea, going to Mount Sinai, they take Joseph with them. And so for 40 years, Joseph is toted around. His bones are toted around in the wilderness for 40 years, until in the time of Joshua, when they cross over the Jordan and enter the promised land, that they actually inter his body for one final time. So some of the promises of God, it takes a while to fulfill. It'd be about 400 years before the promise that Joseph asked them to make could be fulfilled, that they would go back to the promised land. So sometimes God answers us quickly. Sometimes God answers us what is in our minds slowly. But it's always in his time and in his purpose. And Joseph trusted God. And thus closes the book of Genesis. We'll be back tomorrow with a new book of the Bible. We'll see you then.